Just to introduce myself while we let the last few people in, I'm Piali Dasgupta. I'm the Strategy Director for London's Future, which is a fantastic job title here at London Councils, and Housing and Planning is one of the portfolios that sits under me. We're really, really grateful to all of the team that pulled this event together, and I'll pay tribute to them at the very end, but also the London Housing Directors and Jason King from is it Lincolnshire? Sorry, I should have clarified. Is it Lincolnshire that you're from? For joining us. So it helps us make it more of a national event as well and not just a London-based one. So I think we're going to have a lot of really rich insight that applies to the whole country coming out today. I'm actually going to turn it over to Councillor Darren Rodwell, who's the leader of Barking and Dagenham, and also our executive member for Regen Housing and Planning here at London Councils, to set the context for the event today. So Darren, I'll turn over to you.
Thank you very much, and I won't take too much time up, but just to say thank you. Thank you to officers across our organisations. London is an incredible place, but with some real challenges. And delivering for tenants is why all of us get into this role. I do it on a much wider scale because I have residents and tenants, but those tenants are our residents. And that goes for every leader, for every councillor. And we know that every officer that does this because they want a better community moving forward. And we've had challenges, it's fair to say. The challenges are well recorded, the £600 million that has been taken from our HRAs. We know that the ongoing challenges after Grenfell, and obviously what's happened in Rochdale as well, has been terrible. But we've got to carry on finding solutions. And that's why I'm really pleased that Jamie and the rest of the team who lead this work with our great colleagues and officers in London Councils, with yourselves, are coming up with alternatives, supported by, it's fair to say, the local government family as well as government generally. But I have to say how vital this is now. Our stock is the worst of any region in the country. And that's for very good reason. We've got the oldest stock, we've got probably the most diverse, and numbers wise, outweigh what else you will find in the country. But that's not an excuse. What we need to come up with is a way of bringing our stock up ready for the new challenges in the 21st century. So I'm going to leave it to you today to come up, question, debate, but most importantly, think about how, with this document, with the support across national, regional and local government, we can make homes better for all of our tenants in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Darren. And just for those who've joined us in the last couple of moments, we've just now started with the opening remarks to set the context. You haven't missed anything too much yet. And also, while we've still got Darren, because he needs to, unfortunately, he's got some other things that he needs to tend to, is just to thank you for your political leadership. And I know that, as soon as the Awa Bishat case came out and we had the findings, you mobilized cabinet members from across London very quickly to make sure that, at the highest levels of political leadership, we were thinking about what we could do to make things better. And I think the other thing that's really important about the leadership that you've shown around this is that you've really made it comfortable for officers to talk about things that are sometimes very uncomfortable. It's hard to admit to things that are not right and that are failings, but actually only by having that level of honesty and candor together can we get there. So I really appreciate that you've really made this not about a blame game, but about putting our heads together around finding solutions. So thank you so much for your leadership around this.
Thank you very much. And again, this is cross-party leadership. So that has to be acknowledged as well. This is not time to play politics. This is a time to get resolution to problems. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks so much, Darren. You know what? I'm such a rubbish chair. Just in case you might be at the wrong thing, let me just make sure I remind you what we're here for. It's in part a launch of a report that the LGA funded and the Housing Directors Network steered around delivering for tenants, the foundations of an effective local authority landlord service. So you see that slide up on the screen right now. But it's also to invite Jason King to reflect on the experience of a peer challenge process that he participated in, also funded by the LGA. And I think the two come together really nicely around how do we really hold ourselves to account, but also how do we invite in the critical challenge and use data and evidence and intelligence to actually improve our landlord service. So thanks to everyone who's joined us. It's fantastic turnout, and I think it reflects how seriously everyone's taking these issues. So I'm going to turn it over to Joanne Drew, who is one of our fantastic, we've got a really superb professional network here in London, and we really benefit from their professional expertise. So Joanne, I'll let you introduce yourself and then go into your slides.
Thanks, Piali. That's great. So I'm Joanne Drew. I'm Director of Housing and Regeneration at the London Borough of Enfield, and I've been co-chair of the Housing Directors Group for the last 2 and a bit years, working alongside Jamie Carswell, who is going to be on the panel shortly. So I will set the scene to the report. First of all, so next slide, please, Emma. Thanks. Talking just a bit about what we do on the Housing Directors Group. So we are a professional network of senior housing officers from across London's 33 local authorities. Now, collectively, the group members are responsible for 390,000 council properties, 400,000 leasehold properties, which broadly makes that responsible. Every 1 in 10 homes in London is run by a local authority. In addition to that function, we also have the broad strategic role for providing leadership on our housing markets to make sure we've got the right housing at the right time. We are addressing the challenges of homelessness, housing supply, as well as the big issues around climate change, including the London retrofit agenda, which is an award-winning agenda. And I really need to pay tribute to the political leadership that really helped us to get the MJ Leadership in Climate Action Award for our retrofit agenda. So a really positive solution to address some of the challenges that we found. And that's the sort of work that we do on the Housing Directors Group. We facilitate the sharing of best practice. We explore opportunities for joint working, and we lead engagement with key stakeholders on strategic matters on behalf of borough housing teams. So we do that very closely alongside London councils, the infrastructure and officers that they bring, which is really, really excellent. As a professional network, we are politically neutral within the housing sector. So next slide, please, Emma. So in terms of what stimulated us to create this report, it was really around the shaping and evolving context that we were seeing. Now, I think it's firstly important to say that we stand really proud in London of our record for delivering new council homes, with 13,000 starts since we embarked on that journey 3 or 4 years ago. So really great achievement. And building new homes is really important for London. As Councillor Rodwell said, much of our stock is old and it needs to be replaced and renewed significantly. So we do need to bring that new generation of council homes into London, which we're really proud of our track record on that, as well as our retrofit programme. We are determined to build on the successes and progress that we've made on those big agendas so that we rise to the challenges that we now have in our environment, which is sort of set out in this slide. We know, obviously, it has been and continues to be a volatile economic context, unprecedented and newly forming levels of housing need that we haven't seen before, particularly because of the dramatic shift in the private rented sector that we're seeing. We know and completely committed to ensuring that our homes and services are of good quality, and that our relationship with tenants and leasehold is positive and built on partnership relationships. So we're completely committed to that agenda. We recognise that the housing sector has been under scrutiny in recent years, and there's been some defining moments for local authorities that have been shown on screen and social media, as well as other housing providers. So we welcome the challenge from government, our regulatory institutions, and most importantly, our tenants, to ensure that we embed high quality landlord services that are fit for the 21st century. So that's the kind of context for how we sort of thought that we needed to create something that's going to help people to create a new future and think about things differently for their landlord service. So we knew that we needed to step back a little bit to think about the challenges that we had and the ways of approaching those. And we also needed to engage with a wide group of stakeholders on that agenda. So we developed a consultation collaborative process, which it was commenced in summer last year, and we agreed with a number of stakeholders involved in a range of different forums and events, including tenants, council officers, from chief executive to frontline housing staff, and wider partners, what a high-performing council landlord service looked like. And we were really keen to ensure, as I said, that the voice of residents was heard very clearly and acted upon in that service development and design. So the report that we've brought forward as a result of that collaborative process is provides a tool for anyone who wishes to drive forward change in the sector. And that's whether you're an officer or a politician, or whether you're a tenant that wants to think about what's the best way of holding the service to account. So as I've said earlier, the collaborative process that we engaged on included these wide stakeholders and enabled us to really test some underlying thinking and to get a rich range of ideas coming forward that has all been built into the report. And what we hope that we've achieved through this process is that everyone who took part can see their stamp on the report and feel a sense of ownership for what we've created. So next slide, please, Emma. So the structure of our tool, we call it the foundations of an effective service. And we've thought about it by having kind of 5 key areas, 5 foundations that we think is really important when you're thinking about how to design a council housing service within a council which is operating and delivering a wide range of different services. So the first thing is obviously really critical, and that's the vision and strategy role. Alongside the leadership and essential management skills, along with the performance and compliance and assurance functions. So we go from the very high level conceptual to what is happening on the ground, and is it delivering in the way that we intended and the way we've set our vision out. So the foundations report, we had discussions about what this should look like in the beginning, and we were keen to ensure that it's aspirational. We wanted to go beyond just setting out what our statutory and regulatory responsibilities are, and to define principles that will deliver the highest standards of service possible within our resource challenges, and in particular delivered in collaboration alongside our tenants. So with each of these foundations, we examine in the report various principles, as well as the actions and practices that can embody those principles and deliver on outcomes. So throughout, we've built on the insight of colleagues to deliver illustrations of how local authorities are already addressing some of these issues, because there's much good practice and good work going out there across London. And these examples range from basic things that are critically important to tenants. They always tell us, we want you to focus on the basics, and the things that we should all have in place, to innovative new approaches that we're piloting to try and tackle things and challenges in new ways. So if I talk a little bit more about each of those 5 foundations in order to give you a flavour for what the report will be saying. So on a vision and strategy perspective, it's all about ensuring there's a clear articulation of what a service aims to deliver, so that can bring clarity to both residents and staff, and it can enable participants to align behind a unity of purpose, which is really important in marshalling energies and resources to progress your agenda. Properly embedding this foundation means ensuring all feedback from residents is recorded, used to keep the council's vision refreshed and accountable. It also means ensuring strategies and priorities are aligned with financial plans and that they're appropriately resourced. So the sorts of things we will be looking to see as part of evidence of good practice in this foundation would be a clear and realistic vision that members and staff and residents understand and can monitor. The fact that diverse groups of residents are engaged and their needs and aspirations have informed the services, and that capacity is aligned to deliver on landlord strategies and priorities. So we'd be looking to see those things. Now, an example, and I'll take the liberty of using my own borough in Enfield, we've set out a vision for our council housing service that's a key part of our overall borough-wide housing and growth strategy. Now, it was developed with a wide range of councillors because it was pre-local election time, and they were visiting the doorsteps of residents, including tenants and leaseholders, and they heard the voice of residents strongly at that time. And their voice was around improve the quality of our homes, improve the quality of our repairs service, recognising that we had an undersupply of affordable and council housing in the borough. So our vision, as a result of that collaborative and listening to the voice of residents, was created in one in which we are proud to have council homes because we recognise they play such an important role in our community. But our vision is to ensure that we invest, renew and decommission where necessary, so that we ensure that we are all proud of the quality of homes and services we provide. So that's an example of how by developing and talking to residents, you can develop a vision that's embraced across the whole council. Next slide, please, Emma. Thanks. So then the next foundation is on leadership, and that considers the role of elected members, senior officers and managers, and the way in which they marshal the efforts of everyone involved in the landlord service. It means fostering an open, problem-solving and inclusive culture where problems are proactively identified and addressed in a spirit of collaboration and avoiding a culture of blame. It also means that landlord services is represented well across the rest of the local authority. So there's a voice of the council landlord service that's heard and used to join up across different services. And that information is shared and active learning is facilitated between departments and staff. So under this kind of foundation, we're looking to see a corporate culture that promotes honesty, accountability and proactive problem solving. One where landlord and corporate priorities are aligned, mutually supportive, and that help maximise impact for the borough and its residents. One where leadership is professionalism and confidence is high so that we can drive affiliation within the organisation for our vision and our strategy. A really good example of a borough that's doing this well is at Southwark. Their senior leadership team meetings bring together senior officers and elected members with a view to extending visibility and understanding of housing issues beyond just the portfolio holder. Members of the chief officer team meet with the cabinet to cover agendas that include horizon scanning and discussion of policy questions that will come forward in due course by way of cabinet reports. So that early input into shaping future strategy and policy. These meetings are chaired by the leader and give an opportunity to talk about policy, purpose, aims in advance of proposals being firmed up and presented for approval. So that gives a really good way of getting buy-in to these big agendas. And obviously Southwark is a very large council housing service, so really important there. Next slide is management, really important. Management addresses the ways in which priorities, resources and staff are coordinated and aligned. A landlord service that delivers on the management foundation facilitates access to technical skills, ensures that we have modern technology that are helping us to do our job and prevent problems from arising. And it also ensures that the staffing needs of the landlord service are met and that strategies and policies are developed through co-production with residents. Now, in London, we have real challenges with workforce capacity, skills, and just availability of the resources that we need. So that kind of workforce planning aspect is really key to this kind of management foundation. So what we're looking to see under this theme is corporate services providing appropriate support to the landlord service, strong assurance and governance on record keeping, data and finance, the workforce planning agenda, which I've mentioned, and services drawing upon local knowledge and co-production with residents. Now, a good example from a borough on how it does the kind of management agenda really well is at Hillingdon, where they've been driving staff connection to improve outcomes and performance across the landlord service. So they have a programme where staff at all levels receive coaching on understanding the relationship between behaviours, performance and skills in order to inform decision making and define interventions needed. Staff facing barriers and problems are empowered to troubleshoot together, sharing it and comparing ideas and resolutions with other teams, and with performance and data updates from their user-specific dashboards. Okay, the next one is performance and compliance. So that's the next foundation, fourth foundation. So regular and accurate reporting of performance and compliance with regulatory requirements enables local authorities to see their progress towards their own objectives. And it's a really key area of change and preparedness for the new proactive regulatory inspection regime, where we need to be very transparent at this point now with everyone about how we're performing, so there are no surprises when it gets to that proactive period of engagement with the regulator. Now, an effective landlord service needs to be able to gather accurate information about their service and make this available to the public so that they can be accountable, we can be accountable to residents. So under this foundation, we're looking to see that performance reporting is comprehensive, transparent and reflective of resident experience. We're looking to see that data informs service planning, resulting in value for money and improved resident satisfaction, and that performance is improved through impactful action plans with assurance on compliance. Now, under this theme, we've got a good example from Wandsworth Council's landlord service, which publishes an annual report to residents, and it includes a summary of the previous year's activity and performance based on the consumer standards and their own internal standards. It's reviewed by a resident focus group and then published as part of its housing news magazine every September. Okay, so the final foundation is assurance. Elected members, senior leaders and operational staff all need comfort that various complex systems are working as they should and that objectives and targets will be achieved. It means ensuring that there is clarity on accountability structures within the organisation, and notes the importance of having well documented and widely understood risk management, and ensures that we've got vital skills and knowledge that are kept up to date in this space. So on assurance, what we're looking to see is clear accountability, governance and scrutiny, which can earn trust in structures and processes, effective risk-based assurance frameworks, demonstrating effective control and mitigation measures, and that residents and members are given appropriate knowledge and skills to scrutinise strategies and services, so that enabling that challenge and holding to account process, which is a vital part of the assurance framework. Now, the example here is of Waltham Forest, where they've developed a post of Cabinet Commissioner, where elected members report directly into the leader, but without being a member of the Cabinet portfolio, so that their job is to create links between different Cabinet portfolios. And that enables them to hold all services to account and to develop skills and experience that are just not held by one Cabinet member alone. So it kind of disperses political leadership across a wider group of members and participants, which is a really helpful way that they address their assurance framework. So working with the foundations and using the report and the assurance framework that's outlined within it, we recognise that every local authority is different and has their own ways of working, and that they interface with different policies and systems, and have different levels of resources and different cultures. So what we hope we've developed is a framework that's broad enough to enable that unique local level approach, but also sets out a good structure to enable challenge and looking at what a good overall service should represent. So we've translated the key insights of the report into assurance framework, and that can assist local authorities in undertaking open and evidence-based assessment of the strength of each of the foundations within their area. And that might involve collaborative inquiry groups with a range of different stakeholders, all looking at things from different perspectives, and then bringing that knowledge to bear in terms of providing an overall assessment that people can feel is actually representative of what they understand the organisation and services delivering. So with the help of the assurance framework, we encourage every London Borough to undertake the assessment that this report facilitates. And by checking off the principles, actions and practices against the examples in your own borough, you can give yourself and colleagues confidence that components of each of the foundations are in place and working well, and that you've got plans in place to address any areas for development and to kind of excel in the areas that really matter to the your political administrations and your residents. So an example of what the assurance framework looks like is at the bottom of this slide, and we hope that it gives a clear and easy structure to use. So the final point to note that we recognise that we're working at a really challenging time for housing. We have multiple agendas that we need to address, and that there are many things that we need to think about, learn and do differently. So we as a network recognise that we need to continue to support colleagues on their professional development journeys. We've had some really good action learning sets. Most recently, we're about to embark on a peer-to-peer learning programme. We use benchmarking data regularly, and we've just got the recent cut of London performance against the tenant services measures, which we'll be using to influence and shape our agendas and work plans. So it's just to recognise that this is a journey. It's a journey that we will all learn and grow on together. I'm really pleased to have produced this report with the input and support of boroughs and colleagues across London. We really hope that people will find it useful. We will be checking in and doing a bit of a review in a period of time to see how it's worked and any lessons that we can learn and reflect on to improve the tool. We will certainly do that. So I think that's it, Piali.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Joanne, for your leadership in steering this piece of work. And thank you for a very comprehensive overview. For the benefit of everyone, I should have mentioned that there is a Q&A function. So if you've got any questions or comments along the way, if you direct them into that, we'll try to pick them up. We've got 5 minutes before we're due to bring Jason King in to kind of reflect on experiences of a different sort of tool to drive improvement in another part of the country. So if you wanted to put a question in, we can probably take it now. But Joanne, I might ask you to sort of remain on standby if during the panel discussion, if there's something that somebody might have wanted to direct to you now but won't have a chance to, we can always pick that up during that session if that's all right.
That's great. Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. I guess, while we're waiting to see if anybody did want to put something to the chat function, you're a highly experienced, professional in this arena. I'm interested in sort of if there was any examples or anything that you picked up as case studies through the report itself that you think you might want to apply back in your own home borough. Because one of the things I really value and respect about you and Jamie as leaders of the housing network is you're humble enough to always be looking for good practice elsewhere as well.
There's lots of things, and you do learn a lot by being part of the group, and you take on board what people are doing. So it's really helpful. I think the main thing that I'm reflecting on is that the range of different areas that we need to cover, and the resources that we have in place to cover those adequately, because we're all dealing with lots of things, some of it firefighting day to day, some of it improvement activities. So it's basically, I'm really interested in colleagues who bring the space to create for their teams to do this reflection whilst we're all also dealing with the complex, demanding agenda at the moment. So, but I know we've had some great action learning sets at Piali where, you know, there's lots of good ideas shared. So I'll continue to use those forums.
I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A, so I'll just remind everyone, please do jump something in. And then it could be, you know, if you'd wanted to put something to Darren earlier, we can certainly feed back to him later. But including, so, you know, use the Q&A. We're going to go to Jason next. So hopefully we'll have some time at the end of Jason's initial remarks to take some questions about the peer challenge process. But he'll also be joining the panel a bit later on leadership. So a second bite to talk to Jason about anything he reflects on. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the peer challenge experience.
Thanks, Piali, and good afternoon, everyone. Just give Emma a second for my presentation to come up, hopefully. Right, thank you, everyone. I'm Jason King. I'm the Assistant Director for Housing at the South and East Lincolnshire Councils Partnership. I'm delighted to have been asked to talk to you this afternoon about South Holland District Council's involvement with trialling the LGA Social Housing Management Peer Challenge. If you could have the next slide, please, Emma. So it's a little over 14 months since we took part in the challenge, and thinking back to that time, had all sorts of thoughts running through my mind as we were sort of heading towards those final preparations. Will I be found out? Are we good at housing? What have we missed? And probably what's most relevant these days, will the tech hold up? Hopefully the slides that I'm going to share with you this afternoon will illuminate some of that innovation that brought the Peer Challenge to life, and the progress we've made since taking part. Reforming social housing is no secret. It's been actively talked about for a number of years now, and there's never been a more relevant time for us as councils and the wider social housing network to refresh our approach in delivering housing services and engaging in reflective practice, and sort of using those tools to our best advantage. And social housing management, particularly peer challenges, provides an opportunity to reflect for both officers and managers in what tenants see and feel in the services we offer. I could have the next slide, please. So just to give an idea of context of the preparation. So it was back in September 2021, which it all started with 3 words from the leader of South Holland District Council, which were, "We'll do it." And then it was sort of the baton passed over to me, if you like, to work with the LGA on the concept of what was and has become the peer challenge. So like many providers at that time, thinking back to September 21, we were still very deep in our response to the pandemic, and the prospect of being part of a challenge felt like an opportunity, but really daunting at the same time because of those sort of day-to-day pressures. And I think for me, that was one of the first key recognition points, that if we continue to be buried deep in our day-to-day services, then we don't ever allow time for reflection, and as such we're unlikely to ever see any real change. So it really did feel like an opportunity for us to have a look at what we could do and start driving our service forward again. So towards the end of October, the LGA shared the first draft of what a challenge might look like, and at this point at that time we were the second council to be taking part, and we were part of shaping the challenge. A short time after that, we received the list of recommended peers, and we could see the experience that we were going to have access to in taking that challenge forward. But also at that point, we also learned the first council had decided to postpone their challenge, so we were going first. So the pressure was on. There was some nerves, the responsibility of getting it right, but actually all of that soon faded into the background, because actually it was about working together. So the LGA brought Altair in to support with the process, and in my mind it quickly turned from being a challenge into more of a health check. and something that we could truly engage in so that everybody got something out of, we as a council, but also something to offer to the sector. And I think that's how we looked at it from there on in. There were undoubtedly things we wanted to showcase, but there were things we wanted advice on as well, and things that we wanted to look at improving. And we continued that preparation and how it was all to come together. Come to January, COVID restrictions were still robust, directive to be no in-person meetings. So we'd designed a fully virtual challenge at that point. And we'd drawn up the timetable, we got all the meetings in place, and we were ready to essentially deliver it as a fully virtual challenge. And then a week at most before that, we got the news to say that all change again, and there was a directive to move back towards in-person meetings. So we decided at the very last minute to turn it into a hybrid challenge with 3 of the peers on site and 4 working remotely, which worked really well, and actually was one of the best decisions that we made, because it really did bring to life exactly what the challenge was all about, which was getting a true understanding of the service that we were delivering. Can I have the next slide, please? So the final preparation is complete. We welcomed the peer team on Wednesday, the 2nd of February last year. After months of conversation, preparation and briefings, the day had arrived. All eyes were on me for the opening presentation. I'd learnt the skills of embedding a video into PowerPoint a few days before, and I practiced it on various kind of digital platforms. And of course, on the day, they didn't work. So it was one of those moments where you think, oh blimey, you know, what's coming next? But actually, I think the thing that I've reflected on since then, and the reason that I dropped that in, is because it's not about putting a show on. It's, you want to give a good account of yourself, but at the same time, it's about that honest reflection of where you are at that moment in time. And I think that was one of the real important things of, we're all going to be delivering services at different rates, things that we are reviewing, refining, developing. And I think that's really important to realise that at any point you engage in any one of these reflective processes, it will be a reflection of where you are. So the importance of engaging with like-minded professionals, for me, I saw it as holding a mirror up to your service to see what's been reflected. Is that what you want to see, and is it what you expect to see? Because sometimes the two can be very different. So over the course of 3 days, multiple meetings, stakeholder groups, feedback sessions took place. Officers, members, tenants and partner colleagues all engaged to talk about their experience of working with the housing service. The hybrid approach worked well. Peers were dialing into meetings and using video calls to go out and about across the district. Estate tours and tenant meetings worked well, as the hybrid approach helped us to decide which estates to showcase, primarily based on where we could get a reliable phone signal. So the initial findings and progress of the challenge were discussed daily between the lead officer and the political peer, together with the portfolio holder and I. So we were kept really well informed of the process, and it felt like we were part of that journey. Peers are given a very clear brief about the process of peer challenging, that it's not an inspection, and it is more of that critical friend approach to helping, I suppose, go back to what I refer to as that mirror image. But to me, there was a real buzz that came from the challenge, and particularly for us at that time, we were in that sort of post-pandemic period where there was a lot of lost energy from the amount of time that our officers had spent in response. And the challenge did bring about a new energy from people engaging in those discussions about the services they were delivering, and having the opportunity to talk about what they really liked, but also what they would like to work on in the future. So it did feel like a genuine committed opportunity from everybody who took part to get the best outcome for our tenants, from everyone involved. So the next slide, thank you. The challenge was broken down into 6 core areas with some guiding themes contained with each. So through working with Altair, we were able to scope the challenge to highlight existing areas of good practice, as well as highlighting areas of focus. This enabled the challenge to explore areas for reflection rather than just focusing on areas for improvement. The council had identified that tenant engagement and customer satisfaction were areas that we would like a particular focus on. Like many housing providers, our work is never complete. We're always refining and improving. And we felt that that was one of the areas that we were weaker in. And again, with the new era of consumer regulation, it was something that we wanted to have that early look at. So for us, right from that point, 14 months ago, engaging in that initial health check really helped us to focus where we should put our efforts and our energy. The next slide, please. So again, I'm naturally going to talk all about the positives from our experience. And I have to say, for me, there have only been positives. And the reason for that is the commitment and engagement that everyone gives when they take part in such a process. And I can honestly say from that, anybody that was involved really gave everything to it. Peers, before they came and took the time to connect with me, understand some of the challenges that I saw, some of the challenges that I thought the service saw. So it really did feel that although it had a scope that could be applied to any social housing provider, it also felt really tailored at the same time. So there are lots of benefits to, if there are particular areas that you would like some support and help with, that can really be a benefit from this challenge. 3 days is a very short window to cover the breadth of functions that we all deliver, even as a landlord service, by refining the areas to be looked at. But it's certainly long enough to get conversations going, and that's something that's continued to gain momentum as we work to review and refine the service. So use of technology was undoubtedly a key driver. The service and the sector, like organisations and businesses around the world, using technology more and more. And whilst it helped us connect to people, at the same time, it's important that we don't use that as an opportunity to lose that sense of place. So the importance of getting out into our estates and understanding exactly how our customers are living and what their lived experience is really important. So again, as I sort of intimated at the start, the hybrid challenge worked particularly well for that, because people were able to kind of relay their experience of what it was coming across as on screen, but also what it was like in person. The next slide, please. So some of the peer findings included recognition of the shared ambition and pride for our housing between members and officers, recognising that council have a desire to accelerate beyond the decent home standard. Peers also recognised the council had a long history in using innovation to support housing delivery. But peers also felt the council had an opportunity to refresh the approach to resident engagement, adopting a resident first culture. And again, that's one of the reflections I suppose I would give in. There's no magic answer to any of the challenges that we might be looking to resolve. And I think that's one of the what it did give us was the start of the conversations to where we should start to look, how we might start to bring this together, and how we might find what's right for our tenants, but also getting us talking to our tenants. And the same with, a refreshed suite of performance indicators. Anybody can pull together a suite of performance indicators, but it's about understanding what's right and important to you as a landlord, but also to your tenants as a landlord and the service that you're providing to them. So it's also suggested that we make a number of small changes that would improve the service over time, which again we accepted and have continued to work through. The next slide, please. So the recommendations from the challenge have been supported. The council developed an action plan, and since then this has evolved into a continuous service improvement plan. Engagement between members and officers is strong, and with ongoing commitment to implement the necessary changes to deliver a great service. Performance in the housing service and how this works within the council's partnership is progressing, and that's been reflected as part of the refresh of partnership performance measures. Work is underway for us to revise our HRA business plan to ensure we can unlock any future opportunities. Work continues to progress around refreshing our asset management strategy for the same purpose. And this also complements the work programs that we have around energy efficiency and driving the green agenda. The challenge highlighted some resilience concerns with the housing management function. So we've since employed cost of living response officers to support and complement the workload of our housing officers, so that we can get tenants direct access to officers to support them with any challenge that they currently face. We've been working more closely with tenants by adopting a tenant engagement framework. We've also been commissioning video feedback from tenants. We help, I suppose, get that voiceover, if you like, in when we're presenting reports back to members. Then we also use that video feedback so that it can bring some of our reports to life as well. And we're working on a new digital repair reporting platform so that we can offer greater choice to our tenants in booking appointments for repairs, etc. So now I'm going to show you a short video. I say short, it's 7 minutes. That was the shortest we could manage. It was supposed to be about 3.5 originally, but
you've got time, Jason. You're fine. Yeah.
It's an important video, I think, in one sense that it highlights some of the work that we do on housing, but more importantly, it includes feedback from our tenants. And I won't say any more at this point, but I'll follow up after we've seen the video. Thank you, Emma.
South Holland District Council has a couple of housing companies which it wholly owns. Those companies provide a range of different accommodation mixes. There is Welland Homes, which provides private rented accommodation. And we also have South Holland Homes, which provides affordable housing, and the council is committed to the supply of housing through its housing companies.
So my primary function across the council's partnership is with South Holland District Council, who are a retained stock authority. We've got just under 4,000 council properties in management. We recognise that there are a vast number of households, particularly families, that need good quality, safe, secure accommodation to live in, and we can provide that to them in some of our council houses right across the district. But there are also people that need that bit of extra help, that bit of extra support. Julie contacted us and said that she really liked being a council tenant, but actually her property wasn't working as well as it could for her. So we agreed to put Julie on the housing register, and she came up for an offer of one of our new build properties. Julie was living in one of our council properties, a 2-bedroom property, which was slightly larger than her needs. It had a large back garden, 120 feet, which was quite the feat for Julie to maintain on her own.
I don't want to live in a big house, and it was a bit of an enclosed estate, and I didn't feel so safe in there with me and my daughter. So I've been here 3 weeks ish, and I'm just working out where I'm going to go. So, but everything's fitted in. I've just got a few bits left to put up with the drill and that sort of stuff. But yeah, so I'm getting there. When we first came in, my daughter was like, "Oh, this is really lovely. I'd like one of these." Yeah, so it's been really great, really, because I wouldn't be able to afford a mortgage or anything like that because I live on my own. So yeah, it's great. Affordable housing. Yeah, I slept with the windows open. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I do feel safe. Yeah, it's really light, so you would feel safe walking in if you had to on your own or anything. Yeah, it's really quiet. But you don't hear anybody. It's very quiet. Yeah, just feel nice and secure and safe, and hopefully I'll be here now till whenever. Yeah.
We see Julie's move as being a real positive for the council. It demonstrates that we're able to meet housing need for new customers, but also those existing tenants, in making sure that homes that become available again for letting are let to those with a need for family accommodation. Emma has been a tenant with the council for some time now. She lives in one of our rural properties, which is off gas. So we recently removed the solid fuel heating system, and that's been replaced with a new modern energy efficient air source heat pump system.
I was in private accommodation before, and it was very, very expensive, and the landlord wasn't very good at doing the repairs and things like that, and the house fell into quite a disrepair. And that was when I contacted my local authority, and they were able to rehouse me with a council property. It's a really nice place to be. The neighbours are really friendly. I've been made to feel very welcome since I've moved there. I'd have to come home from work and start the fire up with the coal and clean it out and things like that. And the council offered me this new air source system, which I was a little bit dubious about, but I did a little bit of research and spoke to some of the neighbours that had previously had it done. And the guys that came out and done it were absolutely fantastic, very professional, very accommodating, because I can be quite fussy with things. It's fantastic. You just walk in the house and it's lovely and warm. I haven't got to mess around doing all that kind of stuff. It's all digital controlled as well, which is really nice, and they show you how to use that. Hot water's constant, which is lovely. So yeah, it's a much nicer system. I've just been very, very happy with the service that I've received. I've been very grateful for them giving me a property in the first place, and it has made my life a lot easier.
Introducing new energy efficient heating systems into our properties will help tenants with fuel costs, also ensure that their properties are warm and that they've got an efficient system in which to heat their homes and make sure that it meets the needs of their daily lives. So Sarah and Raf sadly have been experiencing homelessness for a period of time. They have been working with the council on and off over a number of years, launching the Rough Sleeper accommodation project. Sarah and Raf were ideal candidates as they wanted to work with the council. They wanted to essentially reset that relationship.
Well, for the past 15 years, me and Raphael's been sofa surfing, living in tents. 1 year in a tent through the winter months, it was terrible. But not to have a shower and that, and going to the swimming pool to have a shower, and like, you know, not being able to cook your own food and what have you, it was really bad. And the council come, and yeah, I was really upset. I used to hate them. Be truthful, I used to hate the council. And I said, why don't you give me a chance? And 4 days after, Polly and Tracy come and said, well, they rang me up and said, we've got a place for you. Jumping with joy. Just being comfortable and clean, and, you know, you're in your own surroundings, you're in your own little nest, and nobody can hurt you, nobody can touch you. It's nice to have warm food in your stomach and to have people that care about you, and the council's been there. Just a lot more happiness and well-being.
Very happy, very happy.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the change in my life. Yeah. So it's true, yeah. And thank you very much, and from the council, yeah, and definitely, and thank you very much from the Polly and Tracy.
I just want to thank the council so much for all their help.
So this is Medlock Crescent. This is one of our newly finished self-contained one-bedroom properties. It's for specifically for those that are rough sleeping or have experienced rough sleeping in the past. We see it as a step from one of our shared accommodation units to enable people to take that full step to living independently. So as you can see, the property is furnished, covering all of the basic needs. So it's got white goods, it's got all of the kitchen facilities, lounge furniture and bedroom furniture, and it comes with support for people to ensure that they can take all the necessary steps to independent living. Thank you for that. I was particularly keen to share this video because I think it highlights the importance of what matters to tenants: feeling safe, having choice, and an accommodation offer that meets the needs of their changing lifestyles. But for me, I think the most powerful words, and again, one of the main reasons I suppose that I wanted to highlight this video was what Sarah said. I used to hate the council. Why don't you give me a chance? And I think that's really timely, taking the time to understand and listen to our tenants, even if they're telling us things that's hard to hear, is what's really important, because listening to their lived experience is vital to us understanding what some of the barriers might be to finding a solution. So I think by taking a different approach and trying to understand how we could better work with Sarah, has enabled us to achieve a better outcome for her, but also a better outcome for us, because how we were working with Sarah previously, particularly around some of the challenges that she was presenting while she was rough sleeping, was really time intensive for us as a council, but also wasn't delivering a good outcome for her. So I'm pleased to say Sarah's continued to engage with us. She's now moved into a self-contained property. She's engaging with us on a regular basis. and has gone from strength to strength, and is absolutely somebody that we would be happy to have back on the housing register for one of our for a property with us in the fullness of time. But I think that, for me, taking that time to listen and understand has made a real difference. So our work will continue. The challenge has certainly been a catalyst for marking the next phase of how we deliver the service. The management team certainly are more focused on driving forward rather than just responding. I think our workforce are adapting. We are getting better at listening to our tenants and working with our tenants to understand how our services look and feel to them. I understand that 4 councils have now taken part since we went first, and there's a few more challenges planned in. If anyone's considering hosting a challenge or participating as a peer, in my opinion, there's nothing to lose and everything to learn. I supported a peer challenge a few weeks ago, and I think I learned as much on that side of the table as I did when we hosted a challenge. So in any engagement tool, in any I suppose self-assessment tool that anybody might be looking to engage with, I think it's a positive experience. And thank you for your time. If anybody would like any more information, please do ask me any questions. I'm more than happy to try and support as best I can. And thank you.
Brilliant. And thank you, Jason, for bringing in, tenants' real experiences and their voices into our session today. That was much appreciated. Because we're going into a panel session, which you're going to be participating in anyway, I'm going to suggest that rather than taking questions for you around this now, if people can save them, and actually, if you want to talk to Jason about the experience of the peer challenge, in addition to the theme of the next panel, which is about leadership's role in all of this, what I might do is to give you a bit of a break from speaking. I might go to Jamie next and then bring you in. Before I do that, I just want to apologise on behalf of our Chief Exec at London Council's Ali Griffin, who's had a family emergency today and is not now able to join us. But I'm going to come at the end after Jason and Jamie have spoken with some of the reflections that she wanted to share on her perspectives on leadership in this agenda. So, Jamie, if you don't mind, I'll pull you in now.
Thank you, Piali, and I've certainly really enjoyed the last session, particularly because that's been new to me, and hearing a lot about that, and I suppose just some overarching reflections about leadership and the role as that officers can have alongside members within local authorities in what we've been talking about today. And there was a word that Joanne used early on, which was stepping back. And for me, that's one of the common themes that I've heard today, is that stepping back and giving ourselves as leaders of housing services the opportunity to do that self-awareness moment, to understand our own services and see our strengths, our potential, and also where we know we still need to grow and when we still need to be stronger, I think is absolutely the challenge of this. And it's both the Delivering for Tenants report and the work that we did as London Housing Directors, and what I've heard about the peer review is that they're not silver bullets, and they're not to say that there is one size fits all and one answer. It's all about how you're delivering for those local needs. And for those of us that are long enough in the tooth to remember, previous regimes around this, where we all talked about Chloe's and 1 stars and 2 stars and 3 stars and an inspection regime along that. And some of us may be thinking, oh, it's just going to be like that again. I think the lesson of this is, for me, is it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be that there's a 3-star authority that somehow solve all the problems and we should all go and copy them, whoever they are. And I think the frameworks that are emerging and the conversations that we'll all be encouraged to have by the regulator of social housing are encouraging us to show the leadership to work out what our communities need, what our authorities need, and what will work for us, and then deliver those according to some overarching principles. And certainly that's the spirit in which Delivering for Tenants, the foundations of an effective local authority landlord service, how that document was commissioned and produced. some other quick reflections, I suppose, is that there's a degree of humility in all of this, and I think Jason really articulated that well. You learn sometimes that you're not as good as you thought you were. And I think it's no secret that in Greenwich, and I share a bit of my personal experience on this, while unpicking the layers of the onion and going deeper and deeper under the layers of the onion, we got to a point in Greenwich where we realised that we needed to refer ourselves to the regulator for social housing, and indeed we've had a regulatory notice which we are working in a very constructive way with the regulator to work through our action plan to remove, and that Greenwich story, I suppose I share it only because for me, all these are tools, just having the awareness, but also the humility to say, okay, things aren't as good as us, and not be beaten up for that. But absolutely, that's the step for improvement, and that's the step how we can all lead our organisations to be better and stronger places, and also how they can really deliver for tenants. So that for me is another overarching perspective that I've really heard today. That leadership that we have to deliver, and I suppose deliver within our own organisations, and these frameworks and I think peer reviews encourage us to work not just in the housing silo, not just in that something called the council landlord service, but across the whole local authority, and making certain that some of these strategic priorities touch on many different parts of the local authority. That leadership does really hinge on data and information. And I suppose this is my slightly last geeky reflection by way of opening, and and I hope maybe we have a bit of a conversation of this in the Q&A section, is that we have information about our stock and our assets, and sometimes that's quite technical, but we don't sometimes all hold that in the same places, and we don't sometimes hold it in different places depending on what aspect of our stock is, and sort of share a bit of my Greenwich experience of when you learn that your building safety information is held on 11 different spreadsheets, then life is not good, and that needs to improve. But we have information about our stock, information about our transactions, and how we deliver services, and how we are delivering services in the day-to-day, and sometimes that's what our customers are really interested in, and we've got to join that up for our customers. And then lastly, we've got information about our tenants themselves, and tenants and customers in the widest sense, and what their needs are, what their vulnerabilities are sometimes, how we need to support them, how we need to join that up with our information about our stock and our transactions. And even though I'm saying slightly, describing the Holy Grail, I think we should all be challenging ourselves about how we hold those three types of information and how we join them up, because that allows us to understand our own performance, that allows us to benchmark, that allows us to demonstrate the assurance and the reassurance that our tenants need, that our members require, and the regulator will ask us about. Enough said, and we all look back on the history and what we've heard about damp and mould, and how we've all been talking about that over the last 3 or 4 months, and I think certainly from my perspective I realised that is how it has to join together. So sort of by way of conclusion, just to kick things off, I really hope that the phase we're entering into is a real opportunity for us in local authority housing. I'm a self-professed local authority geek and advocate, and sort of passionate about how local authorities can be the best social landlords, how we have so many greater opportunities than organisations that choose to just be that single narrow focus. I think local authorities have the opportunity to really be at the very best in this area, we need to give ourselves the opportunities to be the best we can be, and what I've heard today is all about that. And delivering for tenants, which is ultimately, what really matters. So that's a little bit by introduction, Piali, and sort of I know there's questions that I'm happy to come on to.
Brilliant, and thank you for that call to action, Jamie. That's really useful. Jason, I'm happy to give you more time to gather your thoughts and share some of Ali's reflections, or bring you in now, whatever suits you best.
I'm happy just to say a few words, I suppose, on my kind of reflections on leadership. Echo everything that Jamie's just said, but I think the things that stand out for me are perhaps the personal challenges of things that might be a little bit uncomfortable. So saying I don't know, or I don't know everything, is not a comfortable space, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not a reflection of good leadership in recognizing I suppose recognizing the capability of whichever role that you're in. And I think that for me links very nicely into that clear vision. And so often, we are good at putting together visions and we are good at putting together statements. But for me, I think it's clear and realistic. And I think for me, the realistic part is what's important, because that so has to link to most people, whether they're officers or whether they're tenants or members, will respect the realistic element of where there's that level of honesty about what can be achieved and what there is that capacity to be able to deliver. And I think that's really important about being realistic. Working with members, again, I think that's possibly a space that's evolving in a different way to what we've seen previously. And I think investing that time in working with members in how to scrutinise the service effectively, how to understand all of the intricacies of the service, and providing sufficient detail to enable a level of understanding, I think is really important as well. Resources and capacity, again, I think is important, and recognizing when we all want to deliver and we all want to achieve the very best that we can, but also that's dependent on being able to and I think for me that comes back to the basics of not over promising and under delivering, and I think that's recognizing the resources we have. I often refer to us as a council as being data rich and intelligence poor, and I think that we have lots and lots of data, but sometimes we struggle with what to do with that data to help us tell the story of where we should go next, or how we should drive things forward. And I think for me that links into that wider council piece about the direction of travel and what the agenda should be, particularly for housing and landlord services. And I think the one thing I suppose I would reflect is that it's going to be a time of not being afraid to challenge potentially some of those. Every council will be slightly different in the way that it's set. There'll be lots of shared arrangements, lots of different and innovative ways of delivering services, but those tenants that are of the authority shouldn't see a dip in service because it's being delivered in a slightly different way to a neighbouring council. And I think one of the things that springs to mind, so we recently done a review of our complaints, because the corporate complaints policy for the council as a whole didn't necessarily support tenants to be able to get their complaints answered and dealt with quickly. So we've removed the landlord service from our corporate complaints policy and set a policy for tenants, so that it's a really clear and transparent process. So those things aren't always easy to achieve, but that doesn't mean to say that they're not the right thing to do. And I think that comes back to me to my, I suppose, opening point around the leadership that we're all going to have to show in making sure that we are delivering what's right for our tenants is going to lead to some of those difficult conversations. And I think it's, rather than avoiding them, it's about preparing for them and making sure that we have them in a constructive, outcome-focused manner.
Thank you so much for that. I think that was just a really rich set of insights to add to what you've already shared today. From Ali's perspective, a couple of the things that she wanted to throw into the mix is she wanted to encourage us to take a step back, and a bit like you did with the video, Jason, is just think about the role that housing plays in our residents' lives, and think of it as a determinant of health and what it unlocks for people in terms of setting children up for a good start in life, and having a, being able to participate in the workforce, and not, and the health implications and all of that. So I think, this isn't just about, it's not bricks and mortar. It's actually about life chances that we're talking about here. So I think just to remember that as leaders, that actually what we're fundamentally doing is changing people's lives through what we do in this space. She also wanted to kind of remind us that, our tenants are our residents. They're not a subset of our residents. They are our residents fundamentally. And so, keeping that first and foremost in our minds when we're talking about these issues. She really wanted to emphasize, and she emphasizes this to her chief exec colleagues, this is not for housing directors to solve. This is not for the repairs service to solve. This takes whole council, whole place leadership. We've talked a lot about damp and mold and sort of repairs, but actually we also know that antisocial behavior, as came out in the video that Jason shared, that's also a concern. So it's not just about us, it's also about partners in this space, and using our convening leadership tools around that. And then one particular point she really wanted to emphasize around this is, one of the risks in this space is that a lot of us have subcontracted out or contracted out some of these, repairs relation, and services. That is not an excuse for us. We can't duck behind that. We have a responsibility. We hold the ultimate accountability and responsibility in this space. So I think let's also think about some of the tools that we hold in those contracting and subcontracting relationships to make sure that everybody is sharing the accountability, and how are we then going to be sharing the assurance framework, cascading it down the line with all of the people who participate as contractors or partners in this space with us. So those were some of her reflections. And I'm going to take some liberties as chair here to share some of my own, from having worked in a number of different authorities with the failing children's services, around how it feels as a leader when you're letting your residents down. Because none of us get out of bed every day thinking we want to fail our residents. And it's not pleasant, some of the stories that we're hearing and we're seeing. And, Jamie, Joanne, I know that when you talk to housing directors, one of the things that's good about this space is we're digging deeper. We're looking actually for where we're not getting things right. But that means that we're hearing some things that are pretty terrible, actually. It's painful to know how residents' lives have been when we're trying to make residents' lives better. It's hard to hold that as a leader, those sorts of stories. So I think one of the things that I wanted to reflect on is, there's probably more we need to do as leaders to support each other, the resilience it takes, the bravery it takes. And sometimes there's consequences. We're speaking from a place of trying to be professional and trying to be above board, but people do pay a price for this as well. And Jamie, one of the things I respect so much about the self-referral is that's not an easy thing to do as a professional. You're very exposed when that happens. Not every council has that maturity, the strength of the relationships between the political and managerial, sides of the house to be able to do that. So, I just think that, kudos for you for setting that leadership model. But let's talk a little bit about what it takes to cultivate and support the kind of leadership it takes in the face of things that are very, very difficult, and that sometimes people feel like they pay a high personal price around. And we've certainly seen that in the children's services space with social worker and directors of children's services. So we've had a few questions already, and I've also noted, please don't feel like I've forgotten, we have had a question about the assurance framework that I will return to and bring Joanne in at the end. But Abby Davies has invited both Jason and Jamie to say a bit more about governance of housing in their local authorities. So if you wouldn't mind taking that question.
Shall I go first? Just to catch your breath. Greenwich's journey was that they had previously, for a while, had a model where different components of the landlord service were managed within different parts of the council. And it's not to say that can't work, but if you do that, you need one place where you try to bring it again with a matrix approach and with a bit of matrix management, and absolutely have clear lines of accountability. And that wasn't necessarily what Greenwich had previously done. So our governance was partly around our officer governance and member governance, to have a clear member who had lead accountability for housing. Again, not every local authority does that, and that isn't always required, but it makes it easier sometimes. And an officer governance where everything came together with a bit of a line management responsibility at director level. Maybe more importantly, we then spent some time thinking about how we reported things to our decision-making bodies. And in the same way that, excuse me, in the same way that there is a statutory responsibility for, say, an annual adult safeguarding report, or some corporate parenting reports that go to variously cabinets or councils, full councils, I know, in different constitutions. We've set ourselves an assurance framework which requires us to report annually on the state of our assets, our building safety, and I think more widely now we're going to be reporting on some of our sort of the state of our landlord services. That annual report is just a baseline, but it unlocks, I suppose, the analogy is, you know, a cabinet is taking a degree of ownership and grip that you know, you might look to a board to take ownership and grip with in a housing association. And then underneath that cabinet annual look, you have a scrutiny system which looks more frequently, and then requirements to brief in a formal setting senior members in minuted meetings where there's an audit trail, and that there's that clarity. And that doesn't sound like rocket science, but that has been for us a big change. And I just reflect, we all have been doing this for a long time, briefing members, producing you know, dashboards, etc., but making certain those are public, fully published, visible to tenants, absolutely, but visible to the media, visible to the press. That discipline, I think, really makes a difference.
Fantastic, Jamie. Jason, did you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you. I suppose just to add to that, in terms of our position possibly is slightly different, taking account of some of those what I would call more peripheral services. So we have a cabinet structure. The housing revenue account has its own portfolio holder, so there is that accountability and visibility within cabinet, and that link into members. And the way that our sort of cabinet is structured, the landlord function sits within one portfolio. The delivery of housing and new housing sits within sort of the opposite portfolio, who both then report into one of the deputy leaders, who has overall accountability for finance and a number of other functions. So there's a great triangle, if you like, of moving things forward, and that's given us, I suppose, capacity with access to members to be able to move decisions on and be able to report, I suppose, issues in. Some of the challenge that we have, certainly from a governance perspective, that we are working on, and this is where I talk about some of those peripheral services, is where other functions that I think, you know, are part of that end-to-end tenant journey sit outside of the landlord service. So our customer contact centre is contracted out, so that sits in another portfolio. Our performance team sit in another portfolio. So actually, when you start to look at kind of that end-to-end map of a tenant experience, actually there's probably a little part of everybody's experience that sits in each portfolio. And I think that's what we're working towards, particularly with our new partnership arrangements, to try and say, actually, that needs to be, it's not just that's the landlord department, so anything needs to go to them. If you are delivering something that is on behalf in however big or small part, then you have that shared responsibility, and that's what we're trying to instill. So again, some work for us to do with our performance and scrutiny around what measures they would like to see of good performance, so that can also, be challenged where we need to make changes and make improvements. But yeah, I think that's a continuous journey for us in trying to develop, again, certainly that outward facing bit of transparency to say, here's how we're performing, and we're happy to share that. I think there's certainly a work in progress for us on that.
Brilliant. So like a really key theme there between the two of you on the points of transparency, really, in kind of steering the journey. And just also, I think from my perspective, from hearing what you're both saying, it's also displaying the values that we want to be imbuing into the service around not being afraid to take that challenge back, because transparency sometimes invites challenge, and we've got to be ready for that. There's been, Rob Shaw's put in a question, and actually there was a comment earlier when Joanne was speaking around resident engagement, tenant voice, and I wonder if we could tease out more of that. So Rob has asked about sort of what steps councils can take to understand the diverse range of tenant experiences and how they can be incorporated in service delivery and improvement. And then there was a question earlier about, I think about just where else resident engagement sits within the context of the assurance framework as well. So very clearly set out at the very beginning around strategy. But Joanne, if I invite you in, if you want to join the panel at this stage, if you want a chance to also reflect on resident engagement as part of the whole assurance framework. So don't know who wants to go first, but
So a little bit why everyone's catching their breath, PLE. Just, I just reflect that that it's really important. So part of this is culture and values, and culture and values of frontline staff, and properly listening and trying to get under the surface. It also relates to the other question about other council services, and Jason was touching on that as well. What are our channels for listening? Are we forcing people down transactional routes where, well, you haven't got a repair report, well, how are we looking to listen to you? Something about it is having staff that are eyes and ears and just pick up when things aren't quite right. And maybe you're going around there to do a post-inspection report, but you're noticing vulnerabilities, noticing there's other things going on in a tenant's life that are really important. Sometimes those don't relate always to housing services, but it's really important that we understand that as the local authority. My last caveat though is I don't dismiss process after all. Sometimes if you invest getting your transactions really slick and doing them really well and take the pain out of the transaction, you free up your time to do some of this other stuff. So I do think it's and. Otherwise, I think you can end up chasing your tail and asking people to do 15 things, and they can only achieve, half of them.
Joanne, Jason, did one of you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of add a bit around the leadership role, if you like. I make a deliberate effort to ensure that I'm quite visible in promoting the contact that I have with residents, and the importance of that contact, and how I make use of that to help challenge and drive service performance. I do, when I don't know what to do about something, I will often ring an experienced tenant resident on our customer voice, who are wise, experienced and knowledgeable, and they'll always give me a really useful, pragmatic take on how to address something, and I make a point of going with their solution and recommendation, and that gives a signal to staff that it really matters. I also really enjoy seeing tenants in the office, working alongside staff, collaborating, coming up with great ideas. It gives an office an energy and a buzz. And obviously, as we're working more on Teams, we've migrated more. And so having block discussions, in a tall building, and you get 80 residents on a Teams call, and they help to, that helps them to get to know their neighbours, to share issues. So I think there's lots of ways that you can show how important it is and how much of a difference it makes to you as a leader, and also the culture and tone you're trying to set.
Fantastic. Anything to add, Jason?
I think for me, the only point that springs to mind is going back to that being realistic, and I think those honest and genuine conversations go a long way. Listening to our tenants is far more difficult than I think we sometimes appreciate and realise that it is, but it's fundamental. And I don't get back to the floor, for want of a better term, nearly as often as I should. But when I do, sometimes it is just to listen, because it tells me so much about what we design and how it feels. Because, you know, we're so often, I suppose, intent on getting things done. You know, we draft visions, strategies, and policies on certain things, but actually how it feels is the key bit of what we need to know. So yeah, I think in taking all of that great practice of all the different examples that we see right up and down the country of people engaging with tenants, and I think there are some fantastic examples, it's finding the right fit for you.
I think that point about authenticity is such a good one, and it's come through all of you in different ways. I'm actually we're just about out of time, and I wanted to take us back to a question that came a little bit later for Joanne around the health and well-being aspects of the assurance framework, because actually I think it does speak to the point that Alison was hoping to raise around, you know, this being a fundamental aspect of helping tenants and residents to thrive, actually. So Joanne, I will take you back to that one, but I think because we had another question around any synergies around the assurance framework work that you've commissioned and the Better Social Housing Review commissioned by the Fed and CIH. I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking that point really quickly and then going back to the assurance framework and how health and well-being factors in.
Yeah, so I think the Better Social Housing Review, both of our tools, if you like, are the product and result of collaborative endeavour and engagement about how we can tackle the solutions together and as a sector. We're certainly interested in some of the findings, and we're looking at those, and certainly working with the CIH and NHF on how we can share good practice. So we're very supportive of that agenda, and obviously we have housing associations that operate in our boroughs, and we have regular forums with them very often where we'll be talking about that review and our own standard and how can we integrate and join up as much as possible. On the health and well-being agenda, really key, and I guess it's has different levels and different types of interventions in different places. I'm very conscious that if you're working in an area of London that's got high deprivation and a range of challenges, that the health and well-being issues are going to be different in those places to perhaps other areas. So I think it really comes down to the way we would address that through the framework is through the vision and strategy part. Do we want to address health and well-being issues and equalise those to the best parts of the borough, the best parts of London? And then how do we measure those health and well-being indicators? And I think it's really important as well about our vigilance around the health and well-being of residents with recent very tragic and sad situations. We really need to be the eyes and ears and looking out for the interests of our residents and taking action on when we've got signs of concern. And I think partly that will be linked through to our performance framework in the tool and our compliance with our performance framework. So I think, you know, it starts at the vision and the strategy and it ends right in the assurance framework.
Brilliant. We're just about out of time. So, I mean, first of all, I just want to thank our fantastic speakers for your candor and your insight. I think for me, your commitment really rang through. Your sincerity in terms of driving improvement and doing the very best for your residents really came through. Particularly grateful, I think, to Jason for making this a national conversation, not just a London one. We really do benefit from that. But Jamie and Joanne, not just for your contributions today, but for the leadership that you show, you know, day in, day out, not just in your boroughs, but across London. We're really, really grateful for that. Also, remains to thank the LGA, I think, for their support for both tools, actually. And I think it's really important that actually as a sector, we've joined up and now we're also joining up with bodies like the National Housing Federation, because we all want to do the very best for our tenants and our residents in all of this. So I'm actually going to wrap us up right now. We will make the presentations available to you as well as the link to the report. But I think, can I just really encourage us all to not think of it as a report? It's a framework that's meant to be living breathing tool for us. So we will very much welcome your feedback on trying to apply it back at the ranch, how, you know, your residents and your tenants feel about whether or not it, you know, they see themselves reflected in it. So what we'll do is when we share those the links, we'll also let you know who you can share feedback with, because actually we want to continue the conversation. And I'm sure the housing directors are always thinking about different ways that we can actually open up the channels of communication more widely. So with that, I will thank you very much for your participation. I think the fantastic numbers we've had on the call really shows how much everybody's taking this seriously and wants to do better. It's really hard with the day job, so I know an hour and a half away means a lot of, you know, emails piling up. So thank you for your attention, and thank you to our speakers, and thank you so much for the team back at London Councils and with the housing directors. So, you know, Rob Shaw, Joe Small, you've done a great job of really pulling this together for us. Very grateful. Thanks everyone, and have a good evening.
Thanks,